Hello, everybody, and welcome to 2025 and another episode of Geeks Love Lists. My name is Brendan Lotz, and joining me today is Robin Lichetti.
Howdy.
And Clinton Matos.
Hello again, everyone. It's been a while.
Yeah, it's a new year. We all start on a fresh slate, even though it kind of feels like it's just a continuation of the last year. Maybe that's just the result of me getting older and realizing that the passage of time is unending and ceaseless and will never stop. But let's get things started on a positive note. We entered 2025 on the back of what was arguably a really good year for media, whether that be games, movies, TV series, even hardware. And I think that before we jump into what we're looking forward to in the year to come, which is what this episode of Geeks Love Lists is all about, I thought that maybe we could just reflect on the year that was. And while there were a lot of major losses towards the end of the year, in terms of movies and some series, I think there were quite a few number of wins. Robin, you've listed a couple here, a couple pieces of media that you thought were really good. Things like Dune Part 2, which I think everybody on this call enjoyed. The Bear Season 3. What were some of your other major highlights of the last year?
I guess kind of sticking with FX, or I guess for South Africans, Disney Plus. I would say Shogun was another standout for me as far as the TV series is concerned. Yeah, it's kind of swept all major awards during the course of this year, and I think in the early part, during the course of 2024 and in the early part of this year as well. So yeah, really looking forward to what the producers are going to do in the second season of Shogun. Also enjoyed The Penguin. I think that I know that James Gunn is kind of rehashing whatever the DC cinematic universe is going to be moving forward. But yeah, I think the whole team behind The Penguin can really be proud of what they kind of put forward. I think I think a lot of the TV adjacent content around the Batman universe has been a little bit lackluster, in my opinion. People kind of point to the Gotham series as having a few highlights, but that's not kind of my view of it. I think the CW has really, I want to try and be kind here, has really not really taken the material as seriously as I think it should have. Yeah, so yeah, I think that Penguin series was really cool. It was an interesting take on the character, and the introduction of Christina Milotti's character was really cool as well. So there was a great world that they kind of developed there. I'm not too sure what the future holds. As mentioned, James Gunn is doing a whole bunch of things. We might not even see Robert Pattinson's Batman after Batman sequel is whenever that kind of gets filmed, or again, that's kind of up in the air as well. So I guess those are two pieces of media that stood out for me. On the hardware side of things, and hear me out now, I really enjoyed using the Galaxy Z Flip 6. I know that we're talking about a really expensive foldable phone, but I think Samsung have gotten better as far as the engineering is concerned, and I've always been a big fan of foldables that got smaller as opposed to getting larger. So I think that was a really standout device for me last year. And then also I'm still intrigued by the Light phone. Anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's essentially a phone that in previous generations had an e-ink display and for all intents and purposes had no social media on it whatsoever. But it wasn't necessarily a feature phone. For the Light phone, unfortunately, the price for it has doubled. That's because they've added a larger display, a far better camera array, and things like that. It's still not social media focused at all. So again, I might be showing my hipster roots here, but it's an interesting device as far as trying to kind of unplug or kind of step away from all the craziness of social media. I think we can all attest to X and other platforms being just hellscape at the moment. So I was really interested in the device. Technically speaking, you can buy them. You can't buy them in South Africa, but you can buy them for South Africa. There are local networks that will support its functionality, but it's going to cost you a hell of a lot of money. So those are some of the things that kind of stood out for me during 2024.
I just want to.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Brendan. No, go ahead. Go for it.
Go ahead.
Okay, I just want to add two things about what Robin was talking about. I was lucky enough to see Penguin ahead of time. By quite a bit. I got to see the whole series about a month before episode 1 was out. And as everyone knows now, it's a lot of people are absolutely in love with that show. A lot of people say, oh, best ever, best superhero show ever, whatever. And I saw it so early ahead of everyone else, and I just had to keep it to myself because I was obviously under, NDA not to say anything. So that was a strange luck. And then I also had to wait for all the episodes to come out. So I was just had to keep mum to myself for like 3 months, I think it was in total. That was pretty funny. The other thing I just want to mention about kind of feature phones and phones that don't have the cancer of social media. I can't remember which brand it is, but they make a flip phone that is a feature phone, but it can still do YouTube and WhatsApp, and I think those are the only two apps it supports. But it is a feature phone, and I can't remember if it's based on Android or not. But it's something really cool, and it's something I've actually been thinking about getting for my parents, who they do want access to WhatsApp, but they don't want the other smartphone features. If I find out the name of that, I'll add it somewhere, or I actually want to do a story about it for the main website, because I think a lot of people are like me and they have parents who they want to keep up with them on WhatsApp or whatever, but they don't want them dealing with a full-fat iPhone or Android. So if I find that out, I'll definitely let you guys know.
Yeah, not just older people. I mean, I would love a phone that doesn't have the temptations of X and Facebook and Threads and Blue Sky. And I mean, I don't know, I can delete all those apps myself, but I have no self-control. What is this? Clinton, what were some of the things from last year that you really stood out for you?
I'm not going to talk about Penguin just because I covered it there. I don't watch that much TV. It's just a byproduct of not being signed up for most streaming services, the fact that I watch a lot of YouTube instead of TV, and I refuse to support a lot of the insane stuff like you need 10 streaming services just to watch everything. So I won't be covering a lot of TV, but I want to talk about some movies and games quick. So I'm just looking through the movies that came out last year. Deadpool and Wolverine was obviously a big one. Dune Part 2, like Robin said, was a big one. But I want to talk about a movie that kind of got completely snubbed, which was Transformers 1. Now, that movie was fantastic, and it just bombed in every sense of the word. And I don't want to get into right now why it bombed, which I think was completely the fault of the distributors and the marketers. But that movie was kind of cursed by its first trailer, which came out, and it misrepresented what the movie was. And it came out, and I honestly think it's one of the best animated movies ever. And not just because it's a Transformers movie, and I am a fan of that franchise. I just think it's a fantastic movie. It looks really good. The themes that the movie touches on are like shockingly adult. I don't know if you guys have seen it. I wouldn't be shocked if you haven't. But it tackles some really messed up stuff that it gets away with because, these aren't humans and they're not even, like biological entities. They're robots, basically. I know they're not really robots. Don't blame me. You see some like messed up like violence in that movie. I'm not joking. 3 different characters get literally ripped in half in that movie. 3 of them. I thought it was a joke at some point in the movie. It's like, why do people keep getting ripped in half like this? And there's that kind of violence that you can get away with. It's like the old Samurai Jack rules, where you can show this incredible violence because they're just robots. Who cares? But they also use the fact that they're robots to tell a very adult story, which again, I don't think you would have gotten away with if these were robots or aliens or whatever. So I don't want to say it was my favorite movie of last year, but it was very close to being my favorite movie of last year. And I'm really sad more people haven't seen it. And it's on streaming now. So I really recommend people see it. And again, it's not just a kids' movie and it's not just a Transformers movie. It's just a good movie, full stop. And for video games, I'm a bit shocked. I'm a bit behind stuff. So for those who don't know, I usually review Nintendo games for Hypertext. So I find myself missing out on some other games, and just because I'm busy with a lot of stuff, I want to just read these to you quick. I want to ask you guys what you played. This was the 2024 games that got 90 or higher on Metacritic. So, Shadow of the Erd Tree, I'm sure Brendan will mention that. Astrobot, which I think you, Robin, played. Metaphor ReFantazio, I don't think any of us played that. Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Slay the Princess, UFO 50, Animal Well, Satisfactory, Balatro, The Last of Us Part 2, which is the only game on this list that I actually got to last year. Thank goodness you're here, and Tekken 8. So I don't know of those ones I finished off there, Brendan or Robin, you had a chance to get to.
Yeah, only Shadow of the Erd Tree for me. I have thought about playing Balatro, but I also know that that type of game is very addictive, and I have the type of personality that will play that game until 6 a.m. every morning.
Yeah, same.
So I don't even want to try it, even though it looks like it's right up my alley. But the other stuff I didn't really like. I know that ReFantazio was like praised up and down the Game Awards last year. It's not really my style of game. Neither is Final Fantasy, which I heard was praised as well. I think like last year was a decent year for games. I mean, we had stuff like Helldivers 2 come out, which like just captured everybody's attention for a month and then disappeared.
The exact same thing happened with Space Marine 2.
Yeah.
It was also like the biggest game for a month, and then it just kind of quietly, it didn't disappear. It's still getting updates and stuff, but I feel like the arc of Space Marine 2 is very similar to what happened with Helldivers.
Yeah.
2.
I mean, even just talking to my friends last year towards the end of the year and chatting about like what games they played, and I feel like everybody just kind of found the games that they like and sticks with them. And then when something new comes out, they might give it a try. But also, games are really expensive these days.
Oh, well, dude, this isn't the best time to lament about this, but this is a big topic I mentioned recently in my review of Donkey Kong Country Returns HD. That is and not even a remake, but an HD update of a game from more than a decade ago that is 1,300 Rand. It is crazy out there.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
That's why all the indie games are doing so well at the moment. I think like almost like a resurgence.
Yeah, Balatro is like 150 Rand.
Yeah, I mean, even there was one you mentioned there, Animal Well, which I've seen a couple of times at the top of the Twitch directory. So I mean, like, I think you're right there, Robin. It's kind of this resurgence of indie games. I think mainly because they're affordable, but also because they're fun. You know, like, and a lot of these games aren't requiring that you spend 100, 200 hours in them. Because, like, let's face it, life is busy. Life is crazy. Nobody has that amount of time to plow into a game anymore.
Well, guys, can I tell you what's better than 150 Rand for a really good game?
A free game.
Yes, this is something I'm also going to do as a larger story on Hypertext, not to keep saying that, but I played for the first time last year Fortnite. I know that game is kind of a joke, half because of like cultural feelings towards it, and half because, I mean, you can dress up as like Batman and you can fight the Xenomorph from Alien while you're wearing Nikes, and it's that game. It's good and bad because of that. But the reason I actually picked up Fortnite last night, and it's the game I want to mention, even though it didn't come out in 2024, is I picked it up for the first time, and it's so funny hearing so much about this game over the last 7 or 8 years, and then actually playing it. And I had a lot of, I don't want to call them revelations, but there's a lot of weirdness in that game that it's very surprising. that's all I can say. And again, I want to put all my thoughts into an article about this. I am very surprised about what that game is and how it's put together. And I think there's a lot going in that game where if you're just looking at it from the outside, I don't want to say you're missing out. You just might be equally surprised. So I'm going to cut myself short on that and just say I'll put it all in an article right now. But yeah, getting into Fortnite in late 2024 around the Halloween stuff that they had in there, after all these years, was quite something. And I'll let you guys know more about that in that longer story. But that's the game. That was like my game of 2024. I probably played some other games more, but that game, it's got so much content and so much of it is accessible for free. And one of the most surprising things is that game is actually really fair with its monetization, which is kind of the opposite of what a lot of people say when they talk about that game. So yeah, that was probably my most notable game of last year, and I'll put it into words later this year about why I think so.
So for me, one of my favorite TV series of last year was the Fallout series on Prime. I know that it got panned a little bit. Not everybody was the biggest fan of it, but I enjoyed it purely because of how much fan service there was in it. I love the Fallout series. I'm not so much a fan of what's happened in recent years to it. I don't like Fallout 76. I've made no secret of that in my time at Hypertext. But I really enjoyed the Fallout show because it kind of just reminded me of like Fallout 3 a lot of the time. Even like the main city area reminded me a lot of Megaton. I really liked that. I loved the story that Amazon Studios was telling there, especially with Walton Goggins' character, the Ghoul. I thought that was really, really cool to show us that side of humanity outside of the vault, which is something you kind of discover in the Fallout games, but you don't really get to see because you're a vault dweller, or with the exception of like, what is it, Fallout 2 and Fallout New Vegas, where you weren't a vault dweller. Anyway, I just really enjoyed the show, and I thought it was really well produced. The sets were awesome. The locations that they went to were awesome. They even filmed in Namibia for one of the episodes, I believe. So yeah, I really enjoyed Fallout, and I'm looking forward to the second season. In terms of games, Clinton mentioned it, Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree. I had never played a From Software game until I played Elden Ring, and Elden Ring sank its teeth into me like nothing has since. It's left an impression on me that makes it very hard to be objective about video games nowadays. And the expansion Shadow of the Erdtree was more of that, but better. When ahead of release, From Software said that it was around the size of the starting area in the base game of Elden Ring, and we quickly learned that that was a lie. It was way bigger in terms of like levels. Like it was deep, it was wide, it was high. It was astounding, to be honest. And it just added more to the Elden Ring experience. It brought about some new content from some creators that I like to watch. It was just a masterclass, really, and From Software doing what From Software does best. It was so good that Jeff Keighley's Game Awards decided to allow it to be nominated for Game of the Year, which I think is quite surprising considering last year we had Cyberpunk, which didn't get a nod for Game of the Year, even though I think that was really, really great. Yeah, I mean, what can I say? The power From Software is undeniable. And then in terms of movies, I'm going to say something controversial here. And I'm going to say that I quite enjoyed Madam Web, purely for the point. Listen to me here.
This man, boo him.
Yeah, boo me if you want. But I'm going to say that the reason I liked Madam Web is that it was not as bad as people say. There were some really cringe parts, absolutely. Like the part where she goes into the Amazon to like meet her pseudo father person, like that was lame. That was a really lame part. But I think that like people just wanted to hate that movie. And it wasn't great. granted, but it wasn't as bad as people say. And I think that the problem is that we're moving towards a point where everything is good or it's bad. There's no in between. And I think that that's a little bit sad because, like, I wrote about this last year. I watched at the end, or in December, two original movies hit streaming. One was Carry On, which was Netflix, about some terrorist attack happening at an airport. It's basically Die Hard 2. And then there was Red One, which I have since learned was released on circuit but didn't do well. And then it came to streaming and then it did well. And both of those movies were panned by critics, but neither of them was egregious. In fact, I'd even go so far as to say that Red One was kind of enjoyable. And I know it stars The Rock, and The Rock is not a very good actor, but he wasn't really the main character in that movie. He kind of just was a supporting role, and he does really well as a supporting character. And I read the reviews after watching, and I was like, am I in the wrong here for thinking that these movies were fine? Like, they were enjoyable 2 hour, 1.5 to 2 hour romps through a fantasy world, and then it was over. And like, I didn't sit there going, oh, curse these movie producers, they are so terrible. And I'm kind of hoping that in 2024 we're a bit more lenient towards media that isn't blockbuster material, because if everything is a blockbuster, then nothing is really a blockbuster, right? But Robin, you wanted to highlight this point. What are your thoughts about everything kind of being, it must be really good or it's bad? What are your thoughts as regards that attitude in the modern zeitgeist?
Living in a world where before anything is actually released, there is already so much discourse around it that it almost informs people's experiences of it. Whether that be, I think gaming in particular, unfortunately, suffers from it a lot. Something like Black Myth Wukong, which I think was a very good game. We probably should have mentioned it as well as one of the pieces of content from 2024 that we enjoyed. But that, for example, there was a lot of discourse around the developer and what was happening behind the scenes, some true, some false. And it really kind of divided the internet, as it were. And I think that's a problem that's specifically around the visual media space. With hardware, it's a little bit easier because, well, not necessarily easier, but people actually have to use devices before they actually weigh in terms of what's good and bad about it. So you have a more informed opinion that's kind of built upon first-hand experience, as opposed to visual media where people are sharing their opinions without actually necessarily experiencing the content. I kind of berated you a little bit by booing your Madam Web shot, but also I thought it was just fine. I think there is a problem these days with things being a 6 or 7 out of 10 as being bad. That's not bad. That's just fine. And I think the pressure on studios these days to have everything being the best performing piece of media ever released is so high that if anything is just average, it's immediately canned. I think we're seeing a lot of properties suffering as a result of that. So yeah, I think that hype culture or whatever you want to call it, whenever there's this discourse around media before it's even actually hit the platform it's meant to, is kind of ruining that experience. Because I think when we spoke about some of the content we enjoyed last year, and I think indie games have really benefited from this, is that you get to experience something by yourself. You don't necessarily have to worry about influences from elsewhere. And that's something that's great about media, when you're able to experience and discover something for yourself and enjoy it on its own merit or not enjoy it. And I think these days, because people are permanently online, all of that kind of influences how they choose to experience things. I guess also kind of add to that is the fact that things are just really expensive. So heading to the movies or signing up for a streaming platform is quite expensive. So you have to be quite careful about where you spend your money. So you're gonna go online and you're gonna try and find out what other people are saying about a movie. And if they're saying a lot of negative things, you're probably not going to go experience it. So I think that that the magic of discovery is kind of being blunted by the fact that people have to share their opinion about everything all the time. I know that as a publication and media outlet, we are also kind of potentially part of the problem because we share our thoughts as well. But I think a lot of people are now not willing to take a risk and just try out something. And if it's bad, it's bad. It's luck of the draw. But if it's good, now you have something that you can really get invested in. So yeah, those are just my thoughts. I'm trying not to sound too preachy here.
So I agree with mostly everything you're saying, Robin. In theory, the thing I want to point out is I think people are I think the vast majority of people on Earth are less chronically online than you think. I mean, we're talking about an influencer can make or break a movie, or there's negative discussion about this movie on Twitter now. Less people are going to see it. I think if you speak to the average person, like 9 out of 10 people, they'll be like, "Oh, I don't read movie reviews. I don't look on Twitter for people's opinions. I don't care what people say about this movie. I'm going to watch it because the trailer was cool and I saw the trailer during the Super Bowl or whatever." I really think, us included, because we are chronically online, half for work, which is, fair enough. I think we put a bit too much stock into what's happening with online discourse. I'm not saying it's not important. I'm just saying that to the people who are making up like the vast majority of box office results, I honestly don't think they are reading reviews or reading discourse or turning on YouTube to listen to their favorite influencer or whatever. So I just want, if you're listening to this, I just want you to think about like the least online person maybe it's a friend or a family member or something. Like just one day sit down with them and ask them like, what do you think about X, Y, and Z? And I promise you'll be quite shocked by what they tell you. How little stock they put into stuff that's happening on the internet. Again, and this isn't me saying, social media doesn't have an impact on the quote-unquote real world, Facebook or YouTube or influencers and all of that have no real power, because they do have real power in terms of taste making and everything. But I just think it's not as much as we think. And again, I really recommend people get in touch with people in real world and ask them, what do you think about X, Y, and Z, and just see what they say, because you'll be shocked. And I always think about like I mentioned, my parents, they're not online. I got my dad a laptop only a few years ago, and he like watches some YouTube stuff. But those kinds of people, those are the ones who are like making up 90% of movie results, but they are not influenced by this stuff at all. And so again, I do agree with most of what Robin says. I just want people to be not less doom and gloom, but just what's happening on the internet is still not the real world. It's quickly becoming more of the real world. What you say can have a huge impact on your life and everything. But yeah, just speak to people, and you'll quickly see that like a trailer or an advert during a big sporting event or like an appearance on a talk show are still so powerful, and they are still more powerful than kind of new media influencers. So yeah, just keep that in mind whenever you see a hashtag saying, restore the Snyderverse or boycott this movie or yada yada yada. It reminds me of every time this happens. I know we're talking a bit about movies here, but it happens in games so much. How often are they like, boycott this movie because the director did X, Y, and Z, and then the movie is like the biggest movie of the year? Now, how often does that happen? Or like games, I remember like there was a huge backlash against what was it called, Hogwarts Legacy, and honestly, I think the backlash was very worthy. And I didn't buy the game, and I'm never going to buy that game. So I'm fully in the camp of I support the backlash and the boycott against it. That game made billions of dollars. It was like the most popular game that year. Yeah. And so it's like, again, I'm not saying online boycotts don't work or, you shouldn't be an activist for what you believe in. But it's just because we're so involved with the internet and stuff, we think it's the only thing that matters, and it really doesn't. And it matters less than you may think. And I think that's even more so in South Africa, where internet uptake is still much slower than other countries.
Yeah. One last thing I want to mention is something that I disliked greatly last year, and that was Copilot Plus. If you don't know what that is, it's a version of Windows, or Windows with AI baked right into it. What was cool about it is that it's introduced a new ARM chipset for Windows that worked really, really well. But Copilot Plus it's just woeful. It's not a very good AI assistant. It's not very helpful. You can get Copilot on any Windows PC, so you don't need a Copilot Plus PC. I think it's a very confusing operating system, and I feel like it's not going to live very long. I know we were talking about positive things, but I just wanted to mention that because, yeah, in terms of hardware, it was very underwhelming. I don't know if it's going to continue. But yeah, just wanted to mention that. But let's now move on to stuff that we're looking forward to for the forthcoming year. And it's quite a packed year. Some stuff that none of us have mentioned, but I do want to just highlight very quickly, is stuff like The Last of Us Part 2. The series is coming out, which is, I think, that a lot of people are looking forward to. There's a slew of games, a slew of new series that are coming out. For instance, Squid Game Part 2 is currently out. I know that launched last year, but that seems to be doing numbers for Netflix at the moment. And yeah, it's set to be quite a packed year. And we went round and found some stuff that we were looking forward to. And I'm going to pass it over to you, Robin, and maybe you can run us through your movie, series, hardware, anything really that it is that you're looking forward to in 2025.
So as always, I haven't really followed the rules. I have picked
There were no rules
two pieces. So I've picked kind of two pieces of anime for my series and movie for the year. The first is Dan to Dan, season 2, which is coming in July 2025. You'll be able to watch it on either Netflix or Crunchyroll, depending on what access to a streaming platform you have. And yeah, I think if you had to ask anyone who watches anime what their kind of top 3 were in 2024, Dan to Dan would feature somewhere there. It is developed by the studio Science Saru, which also did the Scott Pilgrim series for Netflix. I was a bit on the fence about that series because it wasn't accurate to the graphic novels, but that's neither here nor there. Dan to Dan is really, really good. It's based on a crazy kind of manga, and the characters are insane. These plot lines are equally chaotic, but the artwork and the attention to detail that the studio has put behind the animation is superb. What I really like about it, and I think which will be good for kind of newcomers to anime, is that you can watch both the English and Japanese dubs at the same time. I'm not too sure what the release schedule is for Netflix, but on Crunchyroll you get both dubs at the same time, which is really cool. And I highly recommend you start watching Dan to Dan. It is bizarre and weird, and the characters you will definitely fall in love with. Personally, I'm in love with Granny Psycho, but that's also because, how do I put this? She's really well drawn, if I can say that.
No, you can't. Forbid it.
Yeah, anyone who watches the anime will know what I'm talking about after a couple of episodes. She's a very interesting character. The movie that I'm choosing is Chainsaw Man, the movie, the Reze arc. That doesn't have a definitive date just yet, but it is expected to be launched or released in 2025. I'm not too sure if South African cinemas will release it. However, we have been seeing more and more anime movies being made available locally, so hopefully that's the same case here. I think Chainsaw Man, the first season, I think it suffered from that kind of hype cycle that we were talking about earlier. We were getting teasers and trailers for a good year before the actual series came out. And when it did come out, it was only 12 episodes. Normally, a high-profile anime series will get somewhere between 20 to 24 episodes for this first season. That wasn't the case here, but you could clearly see that Studio Mappa had done a great job as far as animation is concerned. And I'm really looking forward to watch this movie whenever it comes out this year. It'll hopefully be a bit of a redemption for Chainsaw Man, which I still think is one of the better anime that came out in recent years. It just, however, didn't really land the way that many expected it to land, including myself. So hopefully the movie fares a bit better. Then on the gaming side of things, I might be showing my otaku roots here, but I am selecting Ghost of Yote, which is a quote-unquote sequel to Ghost of Tsushima. As the title would kind of describe, it's no longer set on the islands of Tsushima. It's now in a region called Yote, and it also is, I guess, semi-historically based. So it's kind of dealing with a real region in Japan with some characters that are from history, and it's now changing up the protagonist. Instead of Jin Sakai, you're getting now a new female lead. I'm not too sure of her name yet. I must double check it. I'm sure they've shared it already. I must just double check that one. But the change of the protagonist is an interesting one. It'll be interesting to see how they kind of deal with that, because often when a game does that kind of switch up, it can be potentially problematic. I'm thinking about The Witcher, for example, how they're going to deal with that kind of change up in terms of the protagonist. But yeah, Sucker Punch did a great job with Ghost of Tsushima. The DLC was also really good as well. It kind of picked up, and it was exactly the same as far as the experience was concerned. And Ghost of Yote looks good. We've only had a trailer, kind of a teaser trailer so far, so we don't have a deep dive just yet, and we don't have a date yet either. So hopefully it is released this year. It doesn't get bogged down in development hell like something like Assassin's Creed Shadows has been. And yeah, that'll likely be the best feudal era Japan game of the year when it does get released in 2025. And then finally, on the hardware side of things, you guys are going to just allow me to cook a little bit here, but sure. The iPhone SE 4. I know iPhones are ridiculously expensive. That'll never change. But I think the SE models are a quote-unquote more affordable option for consumers. The reason why I'm interested in this device in particular is because it's rumored to be using a Apple-made modem. So in recent years, Apple has been making its own silicon to great effect. They've been doing it on the mobile side of things for quite a long time now, but on their laptops and desktop PCs, they have released a slew of new processors that are all made in-house, and now they're incorporating modems as well. So it'll be a 5G modem, according to rumors, and it'll be interesting to see how that performs both in hand and actually in terms of sales, because as we know, iPhones are really expensive. It'll be interesting to see kind of what pricing they slap on that, because I think in terms of a user experience, I think iPhone is perhaps the easiest to pick up. I think Android has a bit too many SKUs, in my opinion, in terms of the UI. I think iPhone is a bit easier and friendlier, especially for younger and older consumers. So this could potentially be something that you give to a child as their first device, or perhaps an elderly person as their, I don't want to sound too morbid here, but their last device. So yeah, this is one that I'm looking forward to. It's potentially going to be launched in April, or at least announced in April, and we'll see what Apple does from there. So those are kind of my picks for 2025.
So I'm curious as to whether Apple is going to use, because I mean, testing your own modems, I'm sure that they're going to do a lot of internal testing and a lot of internal Q&A before they actually release it. But I'm wondering if they're using the SE as kind of like a test bed for this chip. What do you?
Because I've also heard that. Yeah, I agree. Because I think there's rumors of a slim device that's going to be launched in September, along with the rest of the iPhone series, and that too will be using the in-house modem. Yeah. So I think they're testing it out with those two devices first, see how it goes, and then probably only next year they'll have kind of everything in house in terms of the internal components.
Robin, off the top of your head, do you remember how much the last SE cost in South Africa?
I think it was close to 10. If I remember correctly, I think it was close to 10.
And that's their budget offering.
Yeah, well, a budget is a loose term when it comes to Apple.
Budget is a relative term. I mean, it's 10 grand is budget to somebody, I suppose. Not me, but God bless if that's you. Give me a loan.
Clinton,
yeah.
What are you looking forward to in 2025?
So I'll start with my hardware because it's kind of on the front of the brain because it just got announced this week. That is the Nintendo Switch 2. It's hard to believe. I think it's been 8 years since the Nintendo Switch 1 came out. And I honestly think we wouldn't have mobile gaming PCs, the Steam Deck, the Ally. I don't think we would have that entire class of devices if it wasn't for the Switch. So I'm really excited, talking about expensive hardware. Nintendo stuff is also super expensive. I'm super excited just because it's always fun when something new and big comes out. And I'm really excited for what's going to happen this generation with Nintendo because, the big hook of the Switch was it was something we've never seen before. It was a brand new form factor. There were devices that did similar things in the past, but it was kind of Nintendo saying, listen, we're no longer going to do handheld. We're no longer going to do, home consoles. And for those who don't know, Nintendo has always been split down the middle in terms of its production at its factories and its games and everything between home and handheld. And everyone has always said, imagine if Nintendo just focused on one or the other. And then the Switch came out and they said, hey, we'll focus on both. And everyone was like, what? You can do that? And it was just such an upheaval in the gaming industry. And now we finally have the Switch 2. And I feel like excitement for this one is not as high. Just because it's just the Switch 2, right? It's just the same thing. They made it a little bigger. Reports are saying it's going to, be a bit more powerful, around the power of a PS4 Pro or a normal PS4. And that's just not as exciting as the original release. But I'm really happy to see it. I'm super happy to see that it is going to support complete backwards compatibility. So people who have huge libraries aren't just being left out in the cold. And I'm happy that they've retained the gimmick of the Joy-Cons coming off at the sides. And if other rumors are to be believed, they're actually going to be adding gimmicks. Apparently, inside of each Joy-Con is an optical sensor, so you can use the Joy-Con controllers as a mouse, which is really cool, I think. Now, this is kind of interesting because I always have to ask, here at Hypertext, we are probably going to get a review sample of this device. But people sometimes ask me, would you spend your own money on this if you weren't getting one from the distributor? And, I don't know. Just because, how much spare money I have, how inclined I am to spend that money on Nintendo titles, yada, yada. I don't know if I would be spending my own money on Switch 2 right when it comes out. I would have to wait for reviews, I think. But yeah, hopefully we'll get a review of that out as soon as it's available. It was just revealed this week with very little details. We don't know when it's going to come out. Rumors are saying sometime in the middle of the year. And the rumors haven't been wrong yet on this stuff. So we'll probably see it in the middle of the year. The next thing I'm super excited about is, I'm just looking at the order I wrote them down here. So Borderlands 4. So did you guys play Borderlands 3?
Yes, and I regret it every day of my life.
Robin, did you play it?
No, from me.
Okay, so the reason I'm laughing is that I think Borderlands 3 has the worst story ever put in a video game.
And the worst dialogue.
Yeah, and some of the worst voice acting.
Yeah.
But the thing about that is, Borderlands 3 is a special game. It has the biggest ratio between gameplay and story, where the gameplay is so good, and it's paired with some of the worst things you've ever seen in a video game. So these complaints, myself and Brendan are having, are not unique. Everybody says this about Borderlands 3. I am so interested in the Borderlands 4, which has been announced with just like a super vague teaser trailer, and there's no details yet. And I think we only know it's coming out sometime in April, if I remember correctly. I'm so morbidly curious about this game. Is Gearbox going to do the same thing again, or did they pull off the rarest thing in the world, a big company learning from its mistakes? Ooh, can it be done? Now, we have heard some good stuff. I think, I can't remember what position they held in the company, but somebody came out and they said, if we ship Borderlands 4 and there's a Hawk Tour joke in there, then I'll be very sad, or something to that degree. So
if the word Skibbity is in the toilet, I would have failed. Skibbity toilet is in the game, I would have failed. I think it's the lead writer.
Yeah. So I think they are moving away from that kind of joke and that kind of extremely big quotes humor. But man, that was so terrible. I played that game for review at launch, and I not only had to put up with that terrible story, but also terrible performance. And then I replayed the game like 2 years later once there was some DLC out, and I almost stopped playing it because of how bad and annoying the story is. So I love the gameplay in Borderlands. I've loved that game series since the very first one. I remember back on the PS3, it was one of the few games that I got the platinum for. And let me tell you, that was a lot of work, because there were a lot of trophies in Borderlands 1, which you could only get in co-op. But I didn't have PlayStation Plus, so I did all those games in split screen by myself and still got the platinum. That's how much I love that game. So I love the series. I just hate the humor and what constitutes a story in there. And like I said, I'm morbidly curious if they've been able to rectify that. Because again, like I said, I think it's got some of the best gameplay. And no, I just don't understand why no other companies have been able to make loot to shoot, single player focused game that is, focused on getting thousands of different guns and stuff like that. Yeah, I know. It feels like Borderlands created like one of the best ever ideas for a genre of games, and then other companies were like, "Nah, that's fine. We won't pursue that. Have fun." And Borderlands is like, I don't want to say they've continually dropped the ball, but they haven't been doing very well, have they? So I'm hoping they've rectified things. I'm hoping Borderlands 4 is as good as it can be. Even if it just takes the same gameplay as 3 and gives it a better story, it will be a success in my eyes. Can they do that? I have no idea. Let's see. And for my last pick is Superman. So this is coming out in the middle of the year for sure. It's July of this year. And I know that Creature Commandos is the start of the new DC, even though not really, because Peacemaker is technically in this new universe, except season 1 isn't, but season 2 is, and there's a lot of other caveats and whatever. But if you're asking me, I think this new universe is maybe not starting with Superman, but it all depends on the success of Superman. I think even at DC Studios right now, they are saying to themselves, if we biff it with this movie, this universe is dead already. So there is so much riding on this movie, which is, fun to watch as an outsider because it's not my money. But from what we've seen, it looks really good. I don't know what you guys think. I know some people don't like the costume. They don't like Crypto for, I don't know, I can hate a dog, but anyway, this is the internet. They don't.
That's how you hate a dog. You're evil.
Some people watched the trailer and they didn't like it, but everything I've seen about this movie, I really like, and I think it seems to be that the Mr. Gunn and friends are really leaning into the fact that Superman is the hero of hope, and like. I think the Superman we had in the Snyderverse was like a perfect representation of culture and the internet at the time, when everything is super edgy and everyone's mean to each other and it's all dark and miserable. And now, if we're getting a Superman that's super fun and super bright and super hopeful, I'm like, yeah, that's what we really need right now, right? Everything's as bad as it's ever been. So to have a superhero who represents optimism and hope, it's like a nice feeling. And I know a lot of people said that when the trailer came out. They're like, oh, what's this? I haven't experienced hope in a long time. Now watching this trailer, I'm feeling it again. And yeah, I watched that trailer and I got really excited about it. Now, it could have just been a good trailer. The movie might not be as good. I might be putting too much stock into this movie and how Superman can be a mirror for, the culture that it comes out in, whatever. But of all the big movie events that are happening this year, especially like the Fantastic Four is returning to movies, which would usually be my biggest pick because I'm usually more of a Marvel person. For Superman to be my biggest pick for the year is it's a really big deal to me, at least, and I really hope it's successful. Again, it's not my money. I'm not one of those people who links their identity so close to the success or failure of movies or whatever. So I don't really care if it succeeds or not. But I want more of these movies, and Superman is definitely my pick for this year. I hope it's good. That's all I have to add. I hope Gunn doesn't puff it, but I mean he's such a dependable movie maker, and if he took the idea of Suicide Squad and made his movie, which was so good, I think we can trust him to do good on this one.
Yeah, I am worried about the Fantastic Four reboots. This is like the fourth time
Oh,
they've tried to make one, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a new thing.
Yeah. Oh well.
I don't know what to call it.
Happens. So from Clinton's Superman, I also have a movie that I'm looking forward to, and that's an Apple TV Plus production called The Gorge. It's coming on 14th February, Valentine's Day. It's a movie from director Scott Derrickson, who some of his movies that you might know is The Exorcism of Emily Rose, Sinister, and The Black Phone from 2021, which is very, very good. If you love horror, highly recommend that. But The Gorge is the one that I'm looking forward to for this year. So Miles Teller and Anya Taylor-Joy are tasked with protecting this gorge. And in the trailer, we very quickly learn that this gorge is hiding something pretty dark. And it reminds me a lot of the storyline from The Cabin in the Woods, where there was this ancient evil underneath the earth. It reminds me a lot of that without the horror stuff leading into it. Also stars Sigourney Weaver. And what has me most excited for this movie is that the music is being produced by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. So the soundtrack, at the very least, should be absolutely phenomenal. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this film. As I said, it's on Apple TV Plus. I will admit that I am a bit of a shill when it comes to Apple TV Plus. I struggle to find much on there that I don't like. So yeah, looking forward to this one in February. Then I want to touch on hardware. So earlier this year, at the beginning of last week actually, NVIDIA revealed its RTX 50 series. And it's a follow-up to the 40 series. But what's really interesting about this is that during their presentation, leather jacket connoisseur Jensen Huang announced that the RTX 5070 would beat the RTX 4090 in terms of performance, which is quite impressive if true, because the 5070 is kind of like the middle of the range card, and the 4090 is the top end of this last generation. And that's like a 20 grand, it's actually more, depending on where you go. But it's the top end card from NVIDIA, so it costs you quite a pretty penny. And a 5070 is generally more in the midfield, the middle of the range. But if it's offering the same or better performance than the top range of the previous generation, that's really, really tempting. A lot of this comes from some advancements, not just in the silicon, but in the software. For instance, NVIDIA announced DLSS 4, which will be available for, it seems like most older RTX GPUs. But this is a new multi-frame generation thing. It essentially, DLSS allows you to run games at a lower resolution, and then the image is upscaled so that it looks better. I actually used DLSS to play God of War Ragnarok on PC. And I kept my PC temperature super low, kept my PC really quiet. and it didn't even struggle. So DLSS is really, really great for gamers, especially if you're trying to game at like 4K and want high frame rates. It's really, really impressive. And like I say, I'm really curious to see how well this 5070 and the rest of the 50 series performs. I'm sure that it's going to be phenomenal, as with most new technologies. The key thing here is going to be price. Traditionally, NVIDIA GPUs fetch a higher price than the competition, and I don't see that changing this year. However, I think that increased pressure from Intel may just affect prices in terms of the 5060 and 5070, because Intel's new GPU, the Battle Mage GPUs, seem to be performing really well as a budget graphics card. If you want to game at 1080p and you want to play the latest games, it seems to be a really good option from the reviews that I've seen. There's still another Battle Mage card, a lower end one, that's coming later this year. And I'm curious to see how that performs as well. But like I said, NVIDIA's stuff is kind of the gold standard when it comes to things. AMD has stopped trying to compete with NVIDIA, even though their latest GPUs kind of emulate NVIDIA in terms of the naming conventions, so that buyers are a bit more au fait with like how things compare. But NVIDIA, they really are the gold standard when it comes to GPUs. And I suppose being one of the most valuable companies in the world, worth trillions, does help in that regard. I'm also keen to see how these 50 series GPUs translate into laptops, because in recent years, the performance of laptop GPUs has gotten a lot better, but these RTX 50 series seem to be very power hungry, and I'm expecting that that power demand will be pared down significantly for laptops, which will affect performance at the end of the day. So I'm curious to see how this all plays out and kind of where the PC component market lands once everybody has released their new stuff and it's all out on the market and it's been thoroughly tested, not just by reviewers, but by hobbyists and people in the community as well. So yeah, I'm keen to see how this plays out. And then what I'm not keen for is the inevitable breaking up of these cards and then having the super versions and the TI versions, and it just gets really confusing. But that's just the me thing, and I am old and like to shout at the sky. Finally, the last thing that I'm looking forward to, and this builds off of one of my favorite games from last year, is Elden Ring Night Reign, which was a surprise announcement at the Game Awards 2024. Sorry, Jeff Keighley's Game Awards 2024. So when From Software released Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree, Miyazaki said he was done. There's no more Elden Ring. Maybe in the future something will happen, but for right now he's done. And then bam, the guy came and gave us a Night Reign. So Night Reign is set in the Elden Ring universe, but from the trailer it looks like it's just set in the Soulsborne Ring universe. Essentially what this is you will be placed in an area the size of Limgrave, which is the starting area of Elden Ring, and it's a co-op game, so you'll need to play with 2 other people as a team of 3, and you select a pre-built character and you complete challenges. So it's kind of like a horde mode, I guess, sort of like a challenge run type of thing that you can do in Elden Ring. And I think that this game, it's a standalone game, it's not an expansion. I think that this was born from kind of the challenge runs that have dominated the Elden Ring content space over the past couple of years. So Elden Ring released, a lot of streamers played it, and it got a lot of hype. But after that, I mean, you can't really play the game again. You know, you kind of played it once and the sheen of it is lost. So what content creators started to do is they started to set themselves challenges, and this generated some really interesting content. One of the cooler ones is something called Bingo Brawl. And what this is, it's a randomly generated bingo card, and then players compete against each other to get bingo by doing all the tasks on this bingo board in the Elden Ring game. and you win. And it requires an understanding of the game. It requires a high skill level to kind of do this, but it's highly entertaining. And I feel like Night Rain is a direct sort of copy of what the Elden Ring streaming and content creation community has been doing, setting themselves challenges, trying new things, trying to do things like not just no hit, but like only completing Elden Ring with melee attacks, or only using summons, or whatever it may be. So I'm really keen to play this. I don't know where I'm going to find two other people that I know that are going to play Elden Ring Night Rain, because I'm a sadist and I'm the only one in my group of friends that enjoys this game. But I really am excited to play some more Elden Ring and see what From Software, how they adapt and remix the game for this co-op sort of thing. And I think that may help inform what the next From Software game is going to look like, because Elden Ring was a culmination of everything that they learned from Demon Souls to Dark Souls 3. And I feel like whatever From Software does next will be informed by what they've learned developing Elden Ring, The Shadow of the Erdtree, and now Night Rain. So yeah, it's earmarked for 2025. There's no hard release date that I can find as of yet. And yeah, I'm just more From Software is good. Miyazaki, just keep making video games. We love you. You are a shining star in this industry. And yeah, that's what I'm looking forward to for 2025. And I think that's going to wrap it up from us for this episode of Geeks Love Lists. Thank you for tuning in, and let us know on social media. We're on Facebook, we're on X. Let us know what you're looking forward to for 2025, and tell us why. All the links to that will be in the post below this podcast. So from myself, Brendan Lotz, cheerio. From Robin Lee Chetty.
Take care, everyone.
And from Clinton Matos.
Hi, everybody.
We'll see